Hi everyone, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in this video I want to share the meals I've centered my diet around. They've been the most reliable for keeping my skin clear and free from breakouts. Now if you're new here, this isn't something I came up with overnight. It's based on over 15 months of careful trial and error, tracking every detail of what I ate and how it affected my skin. The funny thing is that the meals I'm going to show you are actually very simple, satisfying and realistic to keep up with. They're basic, but they're the ones that truly work and have kept my skin clear without any doubt. And I believe that's because they're nutrient dense, they give your body everything it needs for optimal digestion, and they stay low in the kinds of toxic substances and irritants that can easily trigger breakouts. That's why diet is really the biggest piece of the puzzle. It's something you might be overlooking, or maybe you've been just lost in all the conflicting advice out there. And I also want to be clear, this isn't influenced by trends, industries or marketing. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just sharing what truly worked for me in the hope that it can help you as well. Now if you're open to something practical and based on real experience and you give these meals an honest try, I'm confident you'll start to see the same results as I've experienced too. So let's start with the first meal of the day, breakfast. Now I call this my anti-breakout breakfast. I always start with 2 to 3 eggs and I alternate between cooking them in butter or highly refined sunflower oil. And sometimes I'll boil them instead and stuff them. When I make scrambled eggs, I like to add a little extra variety and switch it up day by day. Often I will include a few slices of bacon or some leftover meatballs from the day before if I have them ready. I usually pair this with something fresh, either half an avocado or a few cherry tomatoes and sometimes a few blocks of semi-aged sheep or goat cheese. Other days I'll have the eggs boiled and stuffed with avocado mash or a little sheep yogurt. I like adding some herbs like chives or garlic flakes and just a pinch of salt to make it more flavorful. And if I want a little extra, this happens on some days for reasons I haven't figured out, I'll add a handful of local blueberries or a spoonful of traditionally made sheep yogurt. Sometimes I'll even have the yogurt on its own, plain, or with blueberries, or just a small portion of it as a side along my eggs. And that's really it. My breakfast always centers around these foods. The portion size can vary, but the pictures should give you a good idea so you can try it yourself and see what works best for you. Now in case you are wondering about carbs, if you're not very active, like if you're at school most of the day or sitting in an office like me, you really don't need much extra. But if you're more active, you can add a few more blueberries or a bit more sheep yogurt. How you combine these foods is up to you, but they give you a really stable and balanced start to the day. You can easily adjust the portions depending on how hungry you are or how active your day is going to be. And just to mention this, because I think it's really important, there's so much talk about Greek yogurt from health gurus, but you have to realize it's 99% of the time made from cow's milk. That means it's mass-produced, and in my experience, the chances are very high that these products will actually cause the very breakouts you're trying to get rid of. So be mindful of that. My suggestion is to go with sheep yogurt instead, ideally a traditionally made version. So that's it for breakfast. It's simple, it keeps me full and it really sets a tone for the rest of the day. Now, let's move on to lunch, the most satisfying meal of the day. I keep my lunches very simple and I always center them around high quality meat. Now it's not that I'm a T-Rex who only eats meat, but after 15 months of testing so many different foods, it became very clear that meat is the most satisfying for lunch. And the portion doesn't even need to be very large. When I eat whole cuts, it's mostly lamb, like steak, schnitzels or chops. With these cuts, I always add something fresh on the side, usually cherry tomatoes, peeled cucumbers or even zucchini. Sometimes I'll make a simple green lettuce salad with a sheep yogurt dressing. I like to switch these fruits and vegetables seasonally, and when none of them are in season, I mostly add avocado to the meal because I found it's the least concerning in terms of chemical treatments. Occasionally, I include some cooked vegetables like bok choy, broccoli, chicory, leek or red or white cabbage. But honestly, I still mostly center my lunches around the fresh foods I just mentioned because they simply work the best for me. Now about the salad dressings, just in case you're wondering, I used to make them with vinegar and I really tried them all, apple, pears, raspberry, balsamic, you name it. But I noticed vinegar was also triggering breakouts. I believe it's less about vinegar itself and more about the high chemical residues in how it's processed. So while vinegar might not be inherently bad, the way it's produced can definitely be a problem. That's why I like to keep my dressings really simple now, just a sheep yogurt with some organic dried herbs. And along with the salad or fruits, I usually have a small satisfying side. For me, that's mostly boiled potatoes, either plain or topped with a bit of butter and chives or sometimes garlic flakes. Just remember to adjust the portion based on your needs. Personally, I usually go with around 100 to 200 grams, which I found the most satisfying. And don't underestimate the potato variety because it really matters. Always go for waxy potatoes and try different types. Some are just too starchy and can make you feel tired, especially if you eat a larger portion of it. It's really worth experimenting until you find the right variety and portion size that works best for you. I also recommend peeling the potatoes as it helps remove chemical residues. A bit of chemicals here, a bit there, and suddenly your breakouts will flourish. So help your body by removing them in the first place. And don't worry, you'll still get plenty of nutrients from what's inside. What I also like to eat very often are freshly made burger patties. I usually make them from a mix of beef and pork, about 50-50, and sometimes even lamb. The fat ratio of the ground meat I use is around 15 to 20%, and I found that works best. You can also top these patties with a bit of feta cheese or another semi-aged sheep or goat cheese for some extra flavor. I usually serve these patties with a simple sheep yogurt dip. Just yogurt mixed with a bit of garlic flakes, some chives and a pinch of salt. And by the way, in case you're wondering, I only drink mineral water with my lunch and dinner. With my breakfast or desserts, I mostly have Lupin coffee and sometimes regular coffee with just 1 teaspoon of sugar if I feel like it. But I don't drink sugary soft drinks or other sweetened beverages at all. I stopped consuming them years ago and I never looked back. I think that's because when your meals are truly satisfying and give your body the nutrients it actually needs, those cravings for extra drinks or unnecessary additions naturally go away. And while my meals are usually very consistent, I do like to add some variety from time to time. For example, I occasionally have rice dishes, usually with sliced lamb or beef steak and some vegetables and fruits. I add rice mainly for variety, but I want to mention that where I come from, meals are mostly centered around potatoes, and here in Europe we have so many great varieties available. But when I lived in Japan with friends, they had amazing rice varieties too, so technically you can absolutely recreate these meals with white rice, especially if you live in an Asian country where rice is a staple. Just look for good varieties that are locally available. But personally, I haven't tested rice as intensively because in many places the heavy metal content in rice can be quite high. And I personally associate that with breakouts, so be mindful here. Don't just assume it's not the rice that's causing your breakouts. Try experimenting and if possible, recreate the same meals with potatoes instead. It might actually be the solution for your issues. Or at least alternate more to reduce the load of harmful substances your body is taking in, because over time that will ultimately lead to clearer skin. So that's lunch. Now let's talk about dessert and why sugar itself isn't a real enemy. Yes, of course you can have dessert. There's nothing wrong with it. It's really about what you eat and how much of it. Now let's get one thing out of the way very quickly. No, it's not the sugar itself that's causing your breakouts. This is simply wrong. The strongest anti-correlation I have in all my notes is the idea that sugar causes acne. There's honestly nothing more obvious to me than the fact that it doesn't. What is very obvious is the foods that sugar often comes with. Mass-produced pastries, cookies, sweets, and even those desserts like drinks like frappes or overly sweetened lattes you'll often find in convenience stores and coffee chains. Those are full of preservatives, additives, plastics, oxidized oils, and even heavy metals. That's what's really causing the issue. Now personally I like to eat desserts a couple of times a week, and having a cookie after a meal is something I do very often. It's actually very satisfying and often just makes my day. So what I eat are cookies or cake made with very simple ingredients. Just flour, butter, refined sugar, eggs, milk and a bit of vanilla. I leave out everything else that's marketed as healthy or unnecessarily complicated. And here's the paradox. It's exactly those so-called unhealthy basic ingredients that don't cause me any issues. While so many so-called healthy, reformulated alternatives often do. So by all means enjoy your desserts, just don't overdo it. Don't make it a daily habit to consume large amounts. A couple of times a week or a regular sized cookie after lunch or dinner is perfectly fine. And another thing I really like as dessert are blueberries when they're in season. I either enjoy them plain or with a bit of sheep yogurt. So if you're craving something sweet, you can also do that instead. So that's really how I handle desserts. Keeping them simple, choosing clean ingredients and enjoying them in moderation. It's about balance, not restriction. So after a little sweetness, let's move on to the last meal of the day, dinner. Dinner follows the same simple principles, just in slightly lighter portions. I keep dinner very similar to lunch, just a bit lighter. It's still built around a good protein anchor. This could be a smaller portion of meat, some fish, tofu, or even just a couple of eggs again. I simply reduce the portion size compared to lunch. Sometimes I'll have fish, especially if it's fresh and good quality. Now the problem is where I live it's very hard to get really fresh fish. By the time it reaches me, it's already several days old. And in general, I don't eat it too often because of the heavy metals and plastics we unfortunately find in almost all of them today. And before you say, go wild caught, I also thought that at first. But unless you have really access to clean waters, it's often the same or sometimes even worse. So you're trapped in the same health paradox. While I have no doubt that fish is better in theory, the effects are highly questionable when it's full of heavy metals and plastics. Tofu is another option. I personally like eating it, but only the plain natural version, not the smoked or with any other additives, because those can easily trigger breakouts. And when I have leftovers from lunch, I'll often add just a very small piece of meat or even an egg alongside it. I found that it makes it much more satisfying. For fruits and vegetables, I usually use the same ones as I do at lunch, just in smaller portions. So tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, avocado, leek, or a bit of cooked broccoli or pak choi. I usually serve it with a few boiled potatoes, either plain or with some butter and herbs, just like at lunch. Occasionally I include chicken breast. Now you might wonder why I don't eat that much, and I actually saved this for last for a reason. Unfortunately, I found a very high correlation between chicken and the whiteheads on my chin, especially the ones bought from supermarkets that are pre-packaged, which I assume many of you also eat. If you can get it fresh from a butcher and it's not stored for long, it may be a good option, but I really recommend being careful with it. It's the same as I explained with rice. These are tricky staples for many people. Chicken is also mass-produced that it often becomes an issue, especially because of how it is stored. And you might think eggs would also be the same, but they have a natural protection and they're stored differently, and in my experience have been far less of a concern. So just keep that in mind if you're eating it often during the week. Now before we wrap it up, let's talk about what I eat in between meals and of course my weekly pizza day. Sometimes you will feel hungry in between meals depending on your activity level during the day, or sometimes for no clear reason at all. When that happens, the best options I found are really simple. Plain cheap yogurt, a piece of cheese like feta, half an avocado, or just even an egg. You can also combine them, like a piece of cheese with half an avocado or an egg with a few slices of cheese. These small snacks always keep you satisfied without overloading your body. Then there's the pizza day, which I usually have once a week. I've tried many pizzas, even made them myself just for the sake of it. But honestly, it just wasn't the same as ordering one from a store. And in the end, I settled on Domino's thin and crunchy salami pizza with just mozzarella and salami. So my point here is that you can absolutely enjoy foods like this occasionally. It's fine. But it shouldn't be something your entire diet is centered around. At the same time, it's also not about completely restraining yourself from eating it either. Now I hope I have been able to give you some insight into my meal plan and that you've picked up a few ideas for yourself. It's really possible to eat well and still achieve clear skin. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to share them in the comments below and I will be happy to answer. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends who might benefit from it. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one.